SocialEdge interviews social entrepreneurs who tackle some of the world's biggest problems. They are pioneers of innovation that benefit humanity.
My name is Caroline Casey. I'm from Dublin in Ireland. I'm the founding CEO of the Aisling Foundation. Aisling is the Gaelic word for dream or vision. And we believe you don't need eyes to see, you need vision. And what Aisling does is it promotes a very positive image of disability using business, media and communications to really drive change. Well, when I was about 15 years old, I had three things that I really wanted to be. I wanted to be an elephant handler, I wanted to race cars, and I wanted to work for myself. And if I had known at 15 what I eventually found out when I was 17, I think those dreams would have been very different. I was born with an eye condition, a congenital eye condition called ocular albinism, and that means I'm legally blind and I have 3 feet vision. However, my parents made a decision when I was about 2 years old that they wouldn't tell me. And the reason they didn't tell me is because they didn't want me to be defined or labelled by what I couldn't do. So I went off to school with a pair of glasses thinking I could see exactly the same as everybody else. However, I was appalling at sports. I consistently hugged strangers. I couldn't see what was on the blackboard, and I thought I was particularly clumsy. And so eventually at 17 years old, when I went to get my provisional driving license, I found out there was a reason why I was always the last person standing and not picked for the sports team, that in fact I was legally blind. I think the story probably emphasizes for me how hard it is to be labelled as something which you don't believe that you identify with. Being somebody with a disability is incredibly limiting because people focus on all the things that you can't do. And I think for me, when I found out that actually I had a disability or that I was visually impaired to the point of being legally blind, I was so scared that people wouldn't want to talk to me anymore. They would feel sorry for me. They wouldn't see all the things that I could do. And so when I found out at 17 that I had an eye condition, I just completely ignored it. And for 11 years, I strove so hard to hide it from everybody. I did everything that I could do so that you wouldn't notice that I didn't see. When I go to the toilet, I used to look at people's chests, and if they had bumps in their chest, I used to follow them because they were women. When I was studying in university, I used to never go to the library because I couldn't find the books on the shelf. And I had a load of things that I used to have a funny way of getting around my life. And I realised that looking back, I put so much pressure on myself, as do so many people, when you're trying to fit in, when you're trying to be the same. And I think one of the reasons that I work in this area is because it's very lonely when you are not able to articulate what it is that you need, or when you're trying to be the same or you're trying to fit in. And the reason that we work so hard to promote a positive image of disability is to say disability is not everything that I'm about. And eventually at 28 years old, when I was working in Accenture, I came against that brick wall. When I couldn't fake it any longer, when I couldn't pretend to anybody anymore that I could see. And it really broke my heart. And it broke my heart in a way because I had to redefine myself at 28 years old. And I was a failure. And it's hard being a failure, and it's even more difficult to ask for help. And I eventually found myself in the office of the HR department of one of the most successful companies in the world, who I had effectively lied to for a very long time and told them I needed help. And what that did was it really changed my life, because I knew I had to take responsibility for myself. Nobody can fix it for you. Nobody can make it better. There's nobody even to blame. And what I decided, after finally accepting that my eyes weren't going to get better, that I had to make a change. And that's where the change in my life has been extraordinary. Because once I finally accepted that I couldn't see, I actually realised I could do a lot more than I ever knew. And I had potential that could affect change far bigger than myself. And I did the very first thing that I wanted to do when I was little. I became an elephant handler. So I left management consulting to become an elephant handler. And that was the beginning of the thing I do now, which is, because I couldn't find an organisation in Ireland to whom I could raise money with when I did this big elephant handler adventure, I set up my own organisation that was Aisling. I have never even considered, if you told me 7 years ago that I would sit in a camera and talk about this, it would have just been shocking. But you know what you realise is that I have had a huge hidden potential I didn't even know, and we all have it. And aside from promoting an image of disability and saying there's opportunity for all of you, that people with disability are just people. We're not strange. We're as varied as anybody else is. Some of us are great, some of us are not, some of us are difficult, some of us are kind, some of us are funny, some of us are just downright boring. But that's the thing, they're people. And you know, once we start making it normal, it's possible to engage, and it's possible if you think about it. The only thing that makes us the same in the world is the fact that we're different. And if you look at that as a baseline for how we begin, so much of our problems wouldn't exist. And so what I started to do with disability is started looking at business and saying to the influencers of the world, because really it is business that changes the world, look at the opportunity that people with disability can make. We've money to spend, we've talents to give, we've personalities to gain from, we contribute to society, we want to in the exact same way that anybody else does. But if you look at that not just from a disabled point of view, but from anybody's point of view, I think we're all the same. And I think we're all frightened, and I think we all have obstacles, and we all have wonderful moments when we're heroes. But the thing that's horrible to imagine that anybody has to go through is when they're lonely, or they're not being who they're trying to be, or they're not getting that chance, or to think that somebody can't reach their potential. That's not acceptable, because to have potential that's not captured is unbelievable. And what I've learned is, you know, facing the demons, taking the risk. And you know, it's amazing to think at 35 years old now, in the last 7 years, I've achieved my 3 dreams. I became the elephant handler. I now work for myself, running the 2 organisations I set up. And I also got to race a car. In the Malaysian Grand Prix track in 2002, I hit 185 kilometres an hour. And so I suppose what I believe is it's far better to be a dangerous dreamer than a daydreamer. I would love the world to be a place where everybody has the same opportunities, the same access to education, to be able to use their potential. When the issue of disability is no longer invisible, because it is invisible. And that's not anybody's point or fault in particular. There's not necessarily people to blame. It's just the way it is. And I see that it's really possible in 10 years' time that disability can be as visible and vibrant as any other issue that's out there, that we see solutions and we work together. And remember that people with disabilities they're everywhere in the world. There's 750 million of us. And I'd like to see a world where we can contribute to making the world better and to solving the solution, or coming up with solutions and solving the problems. And I actually believe it's possible.
Global X is also on SocialEdge at socialedge.org.